I grew up in a church. Every Sunday, without fail, my family would dress up, walk through those big wooden doors, and sit in the same pew we always sat in. I sang the hymns, I learned the prayers, I knew every passage they told me to know, and I genuinely believed, that I was close to God. But something kept pulling at me, a quiet, persistent question that I couldn't silence no matter how many services I attended, no matter how many times I bowed my head and closed my eyes and tried to feel what everyone around me seemed to feel. Why does it feel like there's something between me and God? I never said that out loud. Not to my mother, not to my pastor, not to anyone. Because in my world, that kind of question wasn't a sign of intelligence. It was a sign of weakness. Or worse, sin. So I kept it buried. I kept singing. I kept showing up. And I kept feeling that invisible distance, that glass wall between me and whatever was supposed to be on the other side. I was maybe 14 when I first started reading on my own. Not just the Bible, everything. Philosophy, other religions, anything that might give me language for what I was feeling. I didn't have answers. I just had questions that grew louder the older I got. By the time I left for university, I was carrying a backpack full of unresolved questions and a faith that felt more like a habit than a heartbeat. My first week in the dormitory, I met my roommates. One was Jewish, deeply, proudly Jewish. She wore her identity like a badge, and she wasn't afraid to talk about it. The other was Catholic, devout in a quiet, private way. We were three women from three completely different worlds, sharing one small room. I remember thinking it was going to be awkward. It wasn't. It was actually the most spiritually alive I had ever felt. We would stay up late, sometimes until 2 or 3 in the morning, just talking about God, about prayer, about what we believed and why. My Jewish roommate would explain Shabbat, and I would sit there completely fascinated. My Catholic roommate would talk about confession and the Virgin Mary, and I would listen with genuine curiosity. And they would ask me questions about my faith, and I would try to answer, and sometimes I couldn't. And that was uncomfortable, but it was honest. It was during one of those late nights that the word Islam came up. I don't even remember exactly how, but I remember the feeling when it did, a kind of alertness, like something in me leaned forward before my body did. I had almost no knowledge of Islam at that point. What I thought I knew was mostly noise. Headlines, stereotypes, things I had absorbed from the culture around me without ever questioning them. But something about that conversation made me want to actually look, not to judge, not to compare, just to see. So I looked. The first thing that stopped me, the very first thing, was the concept of prayer in Islam, 5 times a day. Structured, intentional, facing one direction, speaking directly to God, no priest, no intermediary, no confession booth, no one standing between you and the divine, just you and God and the words. I read that and I sat with it for a long time. Because that glass wall I had been feeling my whole life, that invisible barrier, it suddenly had a name. It was the intermediary. It was the structure that told me I needed someone else to reach God. And here was a faith that said, no, you go directly. You always could. I started reading more. And the more I read, the more I felt something I had not felt in a very long time. Recognition. Like I had heard this before. Like some part of me already knew this and had just been waiting for the words. The concept of Tawhid, the absolute oneness of God, hit me in a way I cannot fully explain. Growing up, I had questions about the Trinity, questions I was not supposed to ask. I asked them anyway, quietly, in my own head, and the answers I was given never fully settled. But Tawhid was clear, undivided, no contradiction. God is one. Worship God alone. That's it. And it was enough. More than enough. It was everything. What drew me deeper was something I hadn't expected, the practicality of Islam. I had always been someone who needed structure. I needed to know not just what to believe, but how to live, how to treat people, how to handle my money, how to eat, how to grieve, how to celebrate. My previous faith gave me values, but Islam gave me a map. And I didn't experience that as restriction, I experienced it as relief. There is something deeply comforting about a faith that takes your daily life seriously. That doesn't separate the spiritual from the practical. That says your whole life, every single part of it, can be an act of worship. I also noticed something about the Muslim community that I hadn't expected. There was no nationalism. No, this religion belongs to this race, or you have to look like us to belong here. I had seen religion weaponized for national identity before. I had seen people use faith as a boundary, a wall to keep others out. In Islam, I found something different. A Chinese Muslim, a Nigerian Muslim, an American Muslim, a Moroccan Muslim, all praying the same prayer, all facing the same direction, all saying the same words. That universality broke something open in me. For months, I moved slowly. I wasn't ready to call myself a Muslim. I wasn't even sure what that would mean for my life. But I kept learning. I kept praying in my own uncertain way, and I kept feeling that glass wall getting thinner and thinner and thinner, until one day it wasn't there anymore. I remember the morning I made my decision. It wasn't dramatic. There was no thunder, no vision. I just woke up and I knew. The way you know something that has been true for a long time and you finally stopped arguing with it. I found a mosque. I sat with a woman there who answered every question I had left, and I had many. She was patient. She never made me feel stupid. She never made me feel like I was an outsider looking in. And at the end of that conversation, she asked me if I was ready. I said yes, and I said the Shahada, Ashhadu an la ilaha illa Allah, wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulallah. I bear witness that there is no God but God, and I bear witness that Muhammad is his messenger. It was the most honest thing I had ever said. What came after? I won't pretend it was easy, because it wasn't. My family did not understand. My mother cried, not out of cruelty, out of fear. She thought she was losing me. She thought I was joining something dangerous, something foreign, something that would take her daughter away from her. Every conversation was a negotiation. Every visit home felt like walking across a minefield. I wanted to explain. I wanted to show her that I was still me, that I was actually more me than I had ever been. But grief doesn't listen to logic, and she was grieving. So I tried to be patient. I tried to love her loudly enough that the fear would eventually quiet down. It took time, a long time. And there were months, I have to be honest, where I was lost, where I had stepped out of one identity and hadn't fully stepped into the other. I wasn't the Christian girl anymore, but I wasn't sure yet how to be a Muslim woman either. Who was I now? What did I look like? What did I sound like? What did I belong to? That in-between space was one of the hardest places I have ever lived. There were days where the sadness sat on my chest, like something physical. Days where I questioned everything. Days where I wondered if I had made a terrible mistake. But I kept praying. 5 times a day, I kept showing up. I kept facing that direction. I kept saying those words. And slowly, so slowly, I started to find the ground beneath my feet. I think people sometimes imagine conversion as this single, cinematic moment, a flash of light, a before and after. But for me, it was more like a long walk, a walk that started when I was 14 and asking questions I wasn't supposed to ask, a walk that wound through dormitory conversations and late nights and tears and books and 1,000 small moments of recognition. The Shahada wasn't the end of that walk. It was the moment I stopped walking away and started walking toward. I am still walking. I don't think I'll ever stop. But now I know where I'm going. And for the first time in my life, I feel no glass between me and God. Just me and Him and the words.